and now live on Facebook. All the things you can do from a hotel lobby, who would have thought?
We're ready to go.
Yep, you can start.
Excellent. So, well, welcome everybody. Cassandra here from Canberra this week, and me from the Berkshire Mountains, or what's, compared to Swiss mountains, they're pretty small. So the Berkshire Hills, shall we say? We are delighted this week to feature the Hudson Valley Writers Center show. Part one is today, which features Dorianne Laux, Leila Chatti, Liz Marlow, Nick Makoha, and Andrea Deacon. But before we move to that, let me introduce my co-host, Cassandra Atherton, who is an award-winning writer, scholar of prose poetry, and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia, even though she's in Canberra at the moment. I believe there's a poetry festival going on there at the moment. Her most recent books of prose poetry are Pre-Raphaelite, Leftovers, and Fugitive Letters. She's currently writing a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry, An Introduction, which came out with Princeton New Press, an amazing book, kind of a comprehensive view of kind of the whole history of prose poetry, and also the anthology of Australian prose poetry. Cassandra's commissioning editor for Wesley magazine. What do you have for us for today?
Thank you. I've already told people my story of woe, which is my work computer, which has so many security levels on it, has decided it's not going to work anywhere except the lobby of my hotel. So it's been an amusing morning. It's 7 a.m. here, and this saga has been going on since 5. So it's always exciting on Lit Balm. I have a prose poem to read. And I got this topic where I was commissioned to write 21 poems on salty. And of course, other people have sweet and sour and umami and that kind of thing. And I thought I wanted to explore all kinds of ideas about salty. And this one's obviously anger as salty. There's a certain way she inveigles herself between us at dinner, turning her back, laughing into your ear, clutching at your shirt, that leaves me at the corner of the table to make the smallest of all talk. When she bows her head in hushed conversation, I hear the sounds of your consonant replies whistling through the whispers. She feeds you a bit of meat from her plate, blood running into the green beans, pinking the white china. You say it's juicy, and she offers you more while I drink double vodka sodas and poke my poached salmon with a fork. I'm firebrand angry, flame driven. You are naked in bed and I stand at its base. We argue for 20 minutes, our voice a twisting of words until in white hot silence we have sex. The noise of rhythmic thrusting fills the space. We are flesh and breath, two bodies searching for an end point. And now one of my favorite things to do is to introduce my co-host, the brilliant Mark Vincennes, who is an Anglo-Swiss-American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published 20 books of poetry, including more recently Einstein Fledermaus, The Little Book of Earthly Delights, A Brief Conversation with Consciousness, There Might Be a Moon or a Dog with Gazebo in Australia, 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues, forthcoming from Spite and Dival, and The Pearl Diver of Irun Mani, forthcoming from White Pine Press. Now, you all know, if you join in, that he does have an album of music, ambience, and verse, Left Hand Clapping, forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincennes is a prolific translator, and he's translated from, I know you know this, German, Romanian, and French. He has published 11 books of translations, most recently an Audible Blue Selected Poems, 1963 to 2016, by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz, just out from White Pine Press. He's currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions, and it is fabulous, and there is nothing like it in the world. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has lived all over the world, from join in Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are more, okay, drum roll, because it's always different every week, witches, butters, bears, head teeth, and deadly galerinals than people. Okay, what kind of animal are we looking at this week, Mark?
Mushrooms.
Oh, of course, you love a good fungi.
Exactly. We're all fungal this week. This poem is a prose poem and comes from my book that I'm working on, Coalition Number 9. Slip of the Forethumb, it's called. Some paper somewhere in a sheaf of others, others somewhere in the shadow of others, even those with snarled edges and crumpled corners turning over upon themselves, was my resignation. The sub-manager handled them like cards. He might have been a croupier in a Las Vegas casino. He shuffled me out in seconds and stood me in front of the air conditioner. He breathed into my neck and I could smell his cheap cologne. It was sweet and sour at the same time and found its way to your nostril hairs and made your stomach turn. Enough is enough, he said. You, comrade, sit within a tin-roofed shack where all the meaning resides. We do not accept your resignation unconditionally. At this point, I was shown into the antechamber. 17 others sat in their flexible orange chairs, all bubbling up, all waiting for their own sheaf of paper. Somewhere across the rooftops, I smelled wonton soup, and it carried me elsewhere, to the shores of ancient Cathay, where, under a spell, a young woman lowered her parasol for an instant to witness the power of the sun. And now, I am absolutely delighted to introduce the first of our featured readers today, Liz Marlow, who is the author of They Become Stars, Slappering Hall Press 2020. Her poems have recently appeared in Body, Potomac Review, the Carolina Quarterly, Greensboro Review, the Rumpus Tikkun, and elsewhere. She earned her MFA from Western Michigan University. Liz currently lives in Memphis, Tennessee, with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so delighted to read with everybody today. Most of the poems that I'm going to read to you are from my chapbook. There's only going to be one at the end that is not. All of the poems that I'm going to be reading to you today are about Chaim Rumkowski, who was the Judenrat chairman of the Łódź ghetto, which was the second largest ghetto in Nazi Germany after the Warsaw Ghetto. Chaim was Judenrat chairman from the ghetto's establishment in 1939 until its last liquidation, or its last transport out of the ghetto at liquidation in August 1944. He's well known for a couple of things, but most notoriously for being sexually inappropriate with women and children while he was an orphanage director prior to his position as Judenrat chairman, and while he held that position. So, and that's even though he was known for being impotent. So you'll just want to keep that in mind as I read these poems. Chaim Rumkowski on Hunger, 1938. A boy sits with his back to the wall of the orphanage, avoiding other children on the playground. His pageboy hat, a little too big, nearly covers his eyes like a wedding veil while he makes circles on the ground with a stick. Is he trying to draw a map home? The boy's eyes, like the sun during a full solar eclipse, fill in light with shadows. If I were to reach out to him, would his skin be soft like freshly laundered shirts or dry and cracked like the earth? In another life, he could be mine. Chaim Rumkowski on Not Having Children, September 1942. Wagons pulled by thin men, not mules, not oxen, not engines, filled with children, leave, come back, filled with bread. Laughter hides under floorboards, holds its breath in walls. Wind and rustling leaves sometimes echo the sound. Will that hush bury me? Chaim Rumkowski on Hunger, 1943. Now that young children are gone, silence and groans consume the rest whose blankets, clothes, thin as paper, burn in an instant for only a few seconds of warmth. What's left is a bridge covered with snow, so much that no one can cross it. There is no skin here softer than sand on a beach. Who remembers beaches? No skin softer than clean hair. No more skin to caress. Who are those women braiding rope and straw for baskets? Or is that hair they're weaving together? If they work hard enough, they will no longer worry about filling them. Chaim Rumkowski on Hunger, January 1944. If you were to ask me how many candies, bread slices I have given for seeing, touching girls, I'd tell you they are countless, like breadcrumbs, like bowls of watery soup. Even Lenin did not hold such power over his people as I do with food. Chaim Rumkowski on the train ride from the Łódź ghetto to Auschwitz, August 1944. Listen to your stomach's rumble like an empty train in the distance, slowly approaching to pass. Remember the difference between the sound of most trains, metal rolling on metal, sabbatons shuffling over piles of coins from emptied pockets. This train, thudding bodies. Close your eyes and imagine headboards slamming against walls as they all fuck. And the one that carried your family, pick out a single scream from a crowd the way you might pick out one violin from an orchestra's tuning session. If only you could have captured a different sound. A niece praying, would a flute arouse that memory? Or a nephew laughing, would a magpie mimic it? To recall while unfolding the photo of them you once stole out of a coat left behind, now crumpled in your pocket. As the train slows, the way a sperm whale slows behind a fishing boat, ready to fill its belly with spoils. Listen to church bells, calling them to mass, calling them to a wedding, calling bystanders away from us. They stand so close that they could toss unwanted bread slices through slats. And this is the last one. Chaim Rumkowski on memory upon arriving at Auschwitz, August 1944. Thick August heat sticks in the air like a cloud around a rotisserie, cooking prime rib roast just before sundown on a Friday night in the orphanage yard. That smoke signaled blessings. The boys dug holes with their fingers, burying beetles, putting pebbles on top, marking tiny graves with hopes that they would come back from the underworld, replacing pebbles with coins. But these beetles, crawling out from a heap of ashes, never leave the underworld. This is the underworld. They schlep loads of ashes on their backs like men, women, and children during a deportation. The loads contain indecipherable messages, names they mimic by clicking. If I say my name loud enough, maybe they'll click it back to life after someone throws me on a pile. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Very moving. Next, we hear from Nick Makoha, who was shortlisted for the 2017 Felix Dennis Prize for Best First Collection of his debut, Kingdom of Gravity. He's a Cave Canem graduate fellow, Malika's Kitchen fellow, and Complete Works alumni. He won the 2015 Brunel International African Poetry Prize and is the 2016 winner of the Toy Deracote and Cornelius Eady Chapbook Prize for his pamphlet, Resurrection Man. His poems have appeared in the New York Times Poetry Review, Rialto Poetry London Tri-Quarterly, Boston Review, Calahoo, and Wazafiri. His poem Vista was used as part of a video installation to promote the Turner Prize in 2008 for the Tate remix. In 2005, award-winning publisher Flipdye Press launched its pamphlet series with his debut, The Lost Collection of an Invisible Man. He's a trustee for the Avon Foundation and a member of the Malika's Poetry Kitchen Collective. Born in Uganda, Nick fled the country with his mother as a result of the political overtones that arose from the civil war during the Idi Amin dictatorship. Nick has lived in Kenya, Saudi Arabia, and currently resides in London. He has presented his work at many international events and toured the British Council in Finland, toured for the British Council in Finland, Czech Republic, the United States, and the Netherlands. Nick's chapbook, The Second Republic, was published by Slappering Hall Press as part of the first 7 New Generation African Poets box set edited by Kwame Dawes and Chris Abani. Welcome, Nick. Are you still muted, Nick? You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry.
No worry.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm going to share with you some poems that I've been working on for my new collection, which is at present titled New Carthagenes. It looks at the Entebbe hijacking that happened in Uganda, but I'm telling it using 3 characters, myself as the poet. I resurrect Icarus as a black body, and I also resurrect the painter Basquiat. Basquiat ultimately is using his paintings to repaint in a kind of double ecraxis way a version of the story that includes black bodies. So I will start with, I'll read you 3 or 4 poems if that's okay with you. So this poem is called Basquiat Asks the Poet About Death. At a rooftop party, the night is the night. We are watching death, or should I say, Bruce Willis is walking barefoot in a skyscraper. I wish I had taken a picture. The host, some newscaster you would recognize from TV, has hired a firm to project the film onto the hotel wall across the street. My date has just returned from the bathroom. I'm her +1. Pointing to an open air bar, I can feel the sun's heat reflecting off the building. She has me speaking in my 4th language, but my thoughts have her undressed in my 1st. By a pool, a waiter asks, "Are you ready to order?" You recommend the pad thai with chicken for 2, and if they're out of that, you say we'll go for the snapper with snake bean salad. DJ Shadow is connecting speakers to his decks when his left elbow knocks the blood orange champagne mule to the concrete. Even falling has its grace. Bruce Willis is at the top of the Nakatomi building, ready to face a paradox. Terrorists intend to blow it up. A building burning is a way of saying, you are not welcome here. The waiter returns with our cutlery. I can see my country in the steel, with only weeks to go before it is bankrupt. And as if one needed a reminder of how one can be in 2 places at once. Who knows what running water thinks or its afterthought? So I'll read you another poem. So I've been titling some of the poems after Basquiat paintings. And the one I'd like to read you is, if I could just quickly find it, is one called Hollywood Africans. And it kind of has all the three characters that I was telling you about. So I'm just quickly trying to scan my document for that, just bear with me. Yeah, here we go. Hollywood Africans. The only thing that was certain was that it was June. We had spread a pepperoni pizza between us. An ultraviolet light set the room. Basquiat channel surfing to looking for cartoons while Icarus prodded a canvas to see if the image fit precisely to the frame. He was certain someone had broken in. I'm getting set to coast towards the front door when the girl of my dreams walks in now. I have to make some lame excuse about how I'm off to the bodega to get some smokes and how I've been craving meat, unbound by this habit. She just smiles, I smile back, then a voice from the back of my throat says, you can come with. Cut to me and her at a stop sign. I don't want to play the right game the wrong way. In the silence that has followed us from the front door, I swat a crown of mosquitoes above her head. There is no water, but I can smell the ocean. The man at the store is sweeping the street, at which point I ask her name. I've only ever seen her in a gallery with a glass of Prosecco in her hand. I watch the man watching us in that night, in that long summer. She pulls out some ice cream from the freezer and adds it to the bill. The pulp of her lips are flint and fire. The birds are silent, and so is the wind. The rest of the night falls away. In another magic, she calls me by my original name. It is difficult to know what to walk away from. She asks why my eyebrows are raised. We are sitting on top of a park bench watching time. We are a part of it, right here in New York City. This is where the road delivers us towards the edge of difference. Butterscotch drips from my fingers and falls to the tarmac, a beautiful suspension. Then I, or you, or whoever decides to look, hand rolls a cigarette as we rummage through our back pockets for a light.
Nice.
So one of the I've seen a lot of Basquiat paintings. Actually, I was recently in New York looking at the King Pleasure exhibition that his sisters put on, and I was traveling across the country looking at the Basquiat paintings that you can see in circulation at several museums. But one of the paintings that actually kicked it off is a painting called Icarus Esso, and that was kind of the connection of myself to Basquiat and Basquiat to Icarus, and it was kind of there that the this idea that I am now calling a collection that I've been working on came to be. And here is a fusion of that poem. The poem is actually called Documenta 7 and Icarus Esso, and I'll share it with you. Documenta 7. I watch a montage of the moon and the clouds at the edge of darkness. After 3 months in Cairo, I was already caught in a trap. It would have been easier to execute a lunar landing in reverse. But this is me listening to a long note getting louder as I walk towards a field. This is me sipping coffee quickly to cure my fears. My shoes look pathetic. Why does coffee in a glass eclipse coffee in a cup? This is me in the corner of a bar saying things like, get out of your body, get out of this prison cell, get out of the furnace of this world. Even when I decorate the space with music, the nightmares still fly out of my head. Icarus Esso, in short, they would have you believe that nothing actually moves through time. Even when I was a boy falling out of the sky devoid of the moon, in the used light, the sky was a red I had never seen, a red usually reserved for war. The sky was something that death could not kill. Look at the shape it throws and how it asks me to be the chorus. The wind nudged me off this black earth as ospreys arced the sky over the hills. Above the souk filled with traders, I became a weight and a measure. In this failing world, my brittle wings were a dark cloak. Now that I am at the cliff's edge, watch how they convulse and quiver. Watch how I disappear. This is me in the back of a taxi with a mountain girl, who tonight will use my body as a throne. I am too familiar with this body. I take it for granted. All right, I'll just read you one more, and then I will say thank you for your ears and your time. So I move across time in this collection, and one of the voices is Hannibal. And as of right now, he holds the grace of being the title poem. And I'm going to read you a poem in his voice. And it's called The New Carthagene, and it has this quote from Marcus Garvey. Black men of Carthage, Ethiopia, and Timbuktu, and Alexandria gave us the likes of civilization to this world. Marcus Garvey. The New Carthagene. We are a slave to the world engine. Nothing eludes it. It has us in synchronous labor. Since birth, our dark matter settling into itself, each one of us from a pyramid removed from its original purpose, yielding as petals do from a flower's bloom. Some want us dead and will do what is required to fulfill that purpose. Remember when they smoked our bodies like cigars? Remember when they tore us from ourselves like loose clothing? Remember when they wore our women like jewels and in that same adornment scattered them as one would the dust among the stars? What of our children? You question me? Maybe I am making this up as one does a dream. Maybe I am a broken king burning in the embers of his own rage. You are right. One of these is true. Would you call my body hanging from a tree an imitation of Christ, or on the cross? Both being killed for something that we did not do? What is the crime? Believing the story or wanting to know the truth? Let us enter through another door. Oh, look, a mirror. Now let us see ourselves as we really are, to stand in the window of oneself and draw yourself into a new shape. Let the storm brew. Lean in. You are not a fridge magnet in a duty-free store or the handle of a dull blade. Hold that note. In this place, you are no longer the chorus. Let this world be your hammer. In any future, remember that you are a new Carthagene. Exit, Hannibal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And next, we hear from Andrea Deacon, who was born in rural Missouri. Andrea has a BA in English from Drake University and an MS in Writing and Publishing from Portland State. Her writing has appeared or is forthcoming in many journals, including the Bear Deluxe, Beltway, the Blue Mountain Review, Spoon, Poetry River Review, Valley Voices, and elsewhere. Andrea received an honorable mention in the 2019 Spoon River Poetry Review Editors Prize Contest and second place in the 2020 Blue Mountain Review LGBTQ chapbook contest. Andrea is a former book editor. She worked for the Multnomah County Library for 15 years. She now lives in Portland, Oregon with her wife and daughter. Mother Kingdom is her debut chapbook. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with all of these incredible writers, and thank you to everybody at Lit Balm too for hosting this. I'm just going to set a quick timer here. Let's see. As you mentioned, I'm going to be reading some poems from my debut chapbook, Mother Kingdom. This chapbook, it came out in March of this year, and it has themes of motherhood, but not in necessarily the traditional sense. It's kind of also about being a mother to yourself. It's also about queerness and identity, and also about being a daughter. So I thought I would start with a poem called Evolution, which, so I've lived out in Portland for 20 years, but in this poem, It goes back to where I grew up, which is on the Osage River out in the country in Missouri. And my father would often go search for arrowheads when I was young in different farm fields that were near our house. And that is where this poem begins. So this one is called Evolution. Was it when I followed my father to the fields, his back hunched, searching for arrowheads, my feet sinking in the newly turned earth? Or was it seeing my mother from the doorway, her back a waning crescent in the dark? Words came easily to me then, alone with paper, my mind a sweet shadow, time a blanket around my shoulders. But coming out my mouth, they choked and stumbled, my face the crushed color of cherries stuck to the bottom of a boot. When I told my father I was gay, he was chopping radishes, their red skins half moons on the cutting board, little gleams of white like a promise worth keeping. His careful hands slicing, their rough wintered edges that held so many things, dogs, babies, stones the color of starlight, my wild heart beating the knife's calm rhythm. What can I fix you to eat? My mother was not so easy, her face pinched pale in the thick dark of her bedroom, thin covers, a moat of righteous limbs, and I the only sinner. Even now, all these years later, my heart closes when I hear her voice. Today it's cold, but the crocuses are coming up, ochre pollen petals, small as thimbles. Soon the geese will head back north, their black wings cutting through soundless cloud. Thank you. So my next poem deals a bit with motherhood. What's interesting, I think, about being a mother is I'll be in these situations sometimes where suddenly my own child comes rushing back to me, but this time it's flipped. So in this poem, my daughter at the time was really obsessed with rocks. Actually, now that I think about it, all the poems I'm going to read today are about rocks. I'm not sure what that means, but so we had read a book together about kids going on a hike, and they collected rocks, but then it turned out that they were too heavy to bring back with them. So the adult with them had them make these little stacks. And so there was a time when my daughter was just obsessed with stacking them. But the thing is, you have to find the perfect rock to do that. So in this poem, it begins with us looking for rocks to stack together. And it's called We Carry Stones with Seasons Inside Them. Newly 6, my daughter fills her fists with rocks to stack from the bruised edge of the Columbia, just north of our house in the city. She squints and stomps like a displeased general. Everything has gone wrong. The wind and water stretch around us, a large lumbering animal rubbing its eyes. It will be fall in a few weeks. Mama, they are too small, she says, not flat enough for the fierce towers in her mind. Her legs blur as she charges ahead. Soon she is on to the next item of business, but I'm left searching. How much she starts that I take on as my own, what motherhood is, the push and pull of waves at the shore. I pocket those that call to me, mostly smooth ones, giving me a kind of peace, probably the closest thing to prayer I've ever felt, river rock to skin. We walk to the top of the boat ramp, jagged concrete ridges reminding me of the time when I was 7 or 8 and played hide and seek with the summer people, a half mile from our house on the Osage. I don't remember if I was it when I fell, slicing my knee on those steep steps, blood caught in the grooves. I looked for a boat full of people, coolers and catfish, tackle hanging off the sides. Instead, there was only murky water, bloated bugs, and old beer cans. My blood. Someone's cousin carried me all the way, running toward our cabin at the end of the tree-lined gravel. Windows dark, the dogs barking. It's bad. You're gonna need stitches. My sweaty hands held his neck. Already shrinking into myself, I shrugged it off. A summer blossom closing at dusk. At the hospital, they gave me 6 stitches. The boy had been right. It was my body, and I was the last to know. Thank you. Let's see. I was only going to read one more, but I feel like it's going faster than I thought. So I think I'll read a short one, and then at the end, I have a new one I'm working on. So this one is called Morning Prayer. It kind of deals with the feeling of forgetfulness and kind of like just not being in control of things. And it was written when Trumpy was president. Morning Prayer. I left my keys in the door all night forgotten, while fires raged across the globe and our president bombed other countries to distract from his own shame. What kind of place is this to give you who didn't ask to be born? The same way I folded inside my own skin as a girl taught not to take up space. And what did my mother feel as a girl when she heard her door opening in the night? Was that the moment her heart closed for good, when she built a fortress around her small body, brick by brick, when heaven became the only salvation? And did I see the girl in her when she tried to pray my gay away? The tight closed eyes and fists, my heart shrinking, swelling, flying away. All the things we do in the name of love. All the ways we keep trying to get free. Thank you. Okay, so for my last one, it's a new one I'm working on. It's called The Grief Factory. And I was sort of playing around with the idea of like, what if grief was something we could hold tangibly in our hands? And it also deals with the idea of grieving a relationship with someone who is still alive, which is something that in Western culture, we don't often make room for. So this one is called The Grief Factory, and it's my last poem. Thank you again for having me. It's such an honor to be here. The Grief Factory. At first, stones, rows of them, the quiet calm, the trajectory of the conveyor belt, the hands of the workers adjusting for shape and size. The Grief Factory keeps odd hours. It is usually open in the dead of night. Stone after stone passed down the moving belt, a living record of the grief the world has made. Backs bent to the never-ending task of assembly to what has been lost. An absence of touch, the sound of your mother's voice, and how their hands could be my own. In the Grief Factory, they are churning out sadness in the shape of small stones. They number in the hundreds, piled up at the workers' feet. Their job is to stack them until the rocks become a wall, too high to climb, until they begin to run out of room. So unaccustomed is the world to love. One day, I filled in at the factory, and after 8 hours on the floor, I looked down in shock. Instead of river rocks, smooth and heavy at the throat, ripe for stacking, suddenly there were flowers, purple petals, stamens long and yellow, falling in soft piles at my feet. Each and every rock my heart had once held for you now turned to flowers in my hands. And that's when I knew you were really gone, forever lost to me in all the ways you've chosen to use your love as a weapon, a garden growing in the feet of my letting go. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next, we are delighted to hear from Leila Chatti, who is the co-author of The Mothers from Slabbering Hole Press this year with Dorianne Laux. She was born in 1990 in Oakland, California, a Tunisian-American dual citizen. She's lived in the United States, Tunisia, and southern France. She's the author of the debut full-length collection Deluge from Copper Canyon in 2020, winner of the 2021 Levis Reading Prize, and long-listed for the 2021 Penn Open Book Award. And the chapbooks Ebb and Tunisia America, the 2017 editors selected from Bull City Press. Leila is the recipient of grants from the National Endowments for the Arts, the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund, Helen Wurlitzer Foundation of New Mexico, and fellowships and scholarships from many institutions, including the Fine Art Works Center in Provincetown and the Cleveland State University, where she was in the inaugural Ames Wolf Fellow in Writing and Publishing. Leila's poems have received prizes from Plowshares, Emerging Writers Contest, Narratives 30 Below Contest, the Gregory O'Donoghue International Poetry Prize, the Pushcart Prize, among others. She's been published in the New York Times, Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, Poetry, The Nation, The Atlantic, Plowshares, and many more. She was shortlisted in 2017 for the Brunel International African Poetry Prize. Leila currently serves as consulting poetry editor at the Raleigh Review and teaches at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she is the Mendota Lecturer in Poetry. Welcome, Leila.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. And those, such lovely poems before this. It's a delight. It's a treat. I'll contribute my little bit to this. I was talking with Dorianne in the chat a little bit, and we're thinking about bouncing back and forth during our reading, as that's how we wrote this together. I hope that maybe that can be okay. Dorianne is, one of the most important people in my life, who I also call Mama, Mama D. So it's very much an honor to have written this chapbook, The Mothers, with her. I'm beyond grateful for her. I'm going to start with a poem called Trying. Trying. When I see the article about the polar bears wandering into Russian homes, I leave it open unread for a week and consider this trying. Because I am trying to be honest, I can't say I am doing my best or even trying my best, but at the very least, at my very worst, I'm trying. I wake up and this is trying, by which I mean I am sad and yet participate in the requisite functions of my life, usually without audible complaint or demonstrative suffering, trying for others' benefit to be polite, or trying to be honest because I'm embarrassed to be suffering. But I also mean this, that I am sad and it is difficult, a trial, a circumstance that tries my patience. The sadness is so annoying. I'm so sad it drives me crazy. Like everyone else, I try to do the dishes, to remember birthdays, not to pick at my degenerate skin. Because I am female, I try to fulfill domestic labors like cleaning out the fridge and unreciprocated kindness. I try to improve my appearance without making it evident I care about my appearance. I try to care about the right things while making it clear I'm still trying with my appearance so that men might consider fucking me. And I should consider this privately, the measure of my worth. And because I'm American, I try to keep up with the crisis de l'heure, with domestic politics and public displays of rage. I try to be productive. I try to remember reusable bags for my produce, to reduce my footprint, to check pronouns and my privilege. I try to do my part to cause little harm, but because I am alive, harm comes with the territory. The territory upon which I rent is stolen, the city gentrified, and all year an unseasonable heat that I, minor accomplice, have to try very hard not to delight in. Short sleeves in February, sweating through Halloween. I admit it. For no defensible reason, I still eat meat, still drive on occasion to the CVS down the street. I've been known to tell a joke that verges on mean. I'm trying, I mean it, to be good in a way that is not covertly gendered or self-serving, to be accountable, to practice virtue without announcement, to make at least half as good what I leave as how I found it. Trying for you. Ink blot, mirage, standing in the artificial dawn on coal tile, golden dew on a stick. First snow, pawing at the window to get in. Over to you, Dorianne.
Beautiful as always, Leila. So wonderful to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. And wonderful to be here. Wonderful to, as Leila said, hear all these incredible poems, some poets that I did not know about until today that I can go now and look up and find your books. Thank you to Slappering for this wonderful, beautiful book. And since Leila's last poem ended with a window, my poem will begin with a window. And it's called Singer, which is the sewing machine that if you're old enough, you had in your house and your mother made clothes on it. And so if you remember it, it had a little pedal on the bottom that had Singer embossed in the metal or, shaped in the metal. This is Singer. If I could go back to the living room window of my childhood house, look again through the pane, it would be a telescope lens through which I might see the first woman I ever met, my mother, at her sewing machine, rewinding the bobbin, little spool with holes like an old movie reel, our tiny lives spun inside of. I might see her long piano fingers touch the balance wheel, the throat plate, the presser bar, one bare foot working the treadle, her heel revealing only the first 3 letters in black latticed metal, sin. My mother was what some called a sinful woman, divorced, pregnant without a husband, a baby boy given up for adoption, remarried, another baby born of another man, a one-night stand while her husband was away at war. She drank too much, thought too much, laughed with her head thrown back, danced with anyone. Too pretty, too brainy, too tall, her black hair a snare that hooked men in. But right now, she's fully visible, stretching the fabric for a kitchen curtain, a child's dress, swatches she salvaged from the deep sale bins, using the selvage for a hem, thereby cutting her handiwork by half. The black oiled mechanism banging out dress after dress, tablecloths and runners, nothing she couldn't cobble together from the waste of others. She was a very peculiar mother, and by now you can see why we loved her. She was a lit fuse in the rain. She turned from her work and set those same fingers on the piano keys and pulled music through the air. Making something from nothing was what she was good at. Love, children, pants and skirts to dress them in, a table covered with cherries on which the beautiful food appeared, roses from her front yard garden in an old cracked vase, her long arms around our shoulders saying, sit still, eat, try not to spill anything.
So Dorianne, we never had a chance to introduce you actually, although I think everyone knows who you are. But I'm still going to let you know that Dorianne's 6th collection, Only as the Day is Long, New Unselected Poems, was named a finalist for the 2020 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. And her 5th collection, The Book of Men, was awarded the Patterson Prize. So I think that probably says it all. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Cassandra, are you back with us, or?
I'm back.
All right.
My internet just died, but we've got some amazing open micers. Can I put them up?
Absolutely. But before we do that, let me just say who we have coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow at the Hudson Valley Writers Center show, we have Nathan McLean, Joan Cohen-Glass, Sean Singer, Jennifer Franklin, and Fred Marchant, who I believe is with us tonight as well. And then over to you, Cassandra, for the open mic.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the challenge is I've even got lobby music, so I apologize for the bad music in the background. Ralph, the brilliant Ralph is up first. We haven't heard him read for a few weeks, so I'm excited to hear him read this week. So Ralph, please unmute yourself and we can hear you read something.
Thank you, Cassandra. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, good. This is a prose poem, which I may have read here before. I'm not sure, but it would have been a while ago. But it'll be out in the next couple of months in a really nice journal called Unbroken, which many of you may know about, which specializes in prose poetry. Send them your stuff. This is called Lesson. She poured herself a glass of water. The act of retrieving the glass from the cabinet and filling it from the kitchen tap, letting the water run across 2 fingers until she was content with its coldness, and then holding the mouth of the glass at an angle to the silvered stream as it steadily filled, had satisfied her thirst more than if she had actually drunk from it. She set the glass down gently on the kitchen table, then just as deliberately seated herself within reach of it. The sides of the glass, tall and narrow, tinted Aegean blue, her distorted, expressionless face. She considered the glass. She considered containment, mass and volume, how they are in some ways the same and yet utterly different. Mass, the amount the glass carries, volume being the space the water occupies. And she thought suddenly and unbidden that her entire life to that moment had been spent holding grief within herself, although grieving what or for whom she knew she could never fully comprehend, and that it didn't matter in any case. A gout of grieving and yet oceanic and entirely captive within her. She dipped a finger in the water and brought it to her lips. Then she rose and, tipping the glass slowly, emptied it into the sink. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Tinted Aegean blue, and she considered containment. What a remarkable sort of poem to series of ideas about that kind of mass and liquid and containers. I think I'm not sure, but I could be wrong, but maybe Dorianne and Leila were going to go back and forward. I popped out because my internet just froze. Is that something that was gonna happen?
Sorry.
Leila, were you reading back and forth and I interrupted, or?
We could, I think, that would be fine with us.
I think that's, yeah.
Sure. Let me put my headphones on. I'll be right here. 1 second.
If Dorianne's still there, I think we interrupted a dialogue of poems. I'm so sorry. I dropped out and then I came back and I think we interrupted you. I apologize.
Oh no, it's just, we're all just chiming in. It's a conversation.
Perfect.
Yeah, I can jump in again. I think I'll read a poem called Eastwood, if that sounds okay.
Fantastic. I'm getting chat bombed with like more Leila and Dorianne. So.
Oh, thank you. This poem is a poem about my hometown. I've been trying to write a little bit more about my hometown, which is East Lansing, Michigan, home of the Spartans. But it's also mostly, it's about a strip mall. That's what Eastwood is. It's not after the person, Clint. But also, of course, about like what it is to be an adolescent girl. Eastwood. Because it's June and there's nothing to do, we go to the strip mall at the edge of town. Someone's mother drives us. It isn't mine. These girls, they've got hair glaring red as a siren, no curfews, boyfriends and rumors of going all the way. I'm 14 and buttoned up in a blouse, bespectacled, a little shy, but last summer I tried to die, which makes me interesting. We loiter in the moist heat of the parking lot, calling lewd things to strangers across the relucent sea of asphalt, laughing with our whole mouths. Every part of us gleams, our licked fingers sticky from free Krispy Kremes, our lips glossed cheap cherry. We're not that beautiful, but we're young, which to men we're old enough to know is close. We stare them down, perched on the curb. We bare our thighs like secrets that have hurt us. Sitting there, impatient, one girl might kiss suddenly another, giggling, shadows merging on the pitted sidewalk, eyes open to see if they're seen. And at the very least, there's me, ever the apprentice in tenderness and nerve. When a man eventually, inevitably approaches, we rise as birds do, all at once, flushed and shrieking until we regroup out of reach, our bodies heaving against each other as if we have narrowly escaped a fate we know to fear, but can't name. Then we do it again, to be sure. When the sun swells before the skies mantling like a rosy bubble, we wander snapping hubba bubba as the streetlights pop on above us, proffer wishes and gossip like they're makeshift stars. We wait for someone to wonder where we are, find ourselves waiting long into the dark. I think we like this part best, the night falling over our shoulders like a borrowed sweatshirt, still warm. The blonde grasses whispering as we circle and circle the unclaimed lot, knowing that we could be forgotten, but are not. And if we listen hard, before someone comes for us, some nights our names are called between guitar riffs on the classic rock station, blaring from rusted cars in the bar patio across the street. Songs we know by heart, songs our fathers once sang to our mothers before they were ours or anyone's. Ballads that made them believe it was possible. They could, a lifetime, love, be loved, desperately, like that.
That was amazing. So Dorianne, do you have one in response? Is that this
I
beautiful
do.
dialogue? Amazing.
Yeah, we thought we would do this because it might give people a more, kind of
Yeah, it's a fantastic
fuller
idea.
of the
Yeah.
book. So I follow Leila's poem about Eastwood and this desperate love with a poem of my own called Bread and Peaches. Remember your first peach, how the knife slid right through to the pit, how you worked the blade around it until the perfect halves fell away from the embrace, like two lovers after sex, their soft parts still oozing with sticky juice. And what a moment ago seemed so warm and inseparable is now susceptible to the air's rivers of chill, the cloudy sky, their breath caught on the cold, the blanket pulled close to cover the gods of their bodies, which moments ago had imploded like stars, the pips of her nipples, once again alone, his penis receding, his sweet sac relaxing. Years from now, you will remember this as your husband kneads his first loaf of bread, bakes it in an oven, the scent of yeast and decency rising, pulls it swollen and golden from the heat, holding it out to you on a platter like the ring he gave you that you've never once removed, the skin beneath it untouched by sun.
I think I'll read back to you, Dorianne, poem that starts with sun. It starts the image of sun and ends with a little bit of sun. It's called Driving Up the Mountain. It takes place in Taos, New Mexico, if anyone's curious. The river's swollen because the earth is different now, has suffered long damage. I take part in this and no pride. My new car weaving needlessly down and back up the mountain, so I might have a particular kind of cheese, sweet lemons. It's the last summer of my 20s, and I'm old enough to feel bad about everything, if given the chance. My thighs thick against the seats, unshaven. My hair and face unwashed for days. I speak coolly without due prompting at the tourists slowing down, pulling off onto the narrow shoulder and running across for a look. Along the one road to town, there are petals flimsy as paper, wings pitched like litter on the breeze. It's not that I don't know what's beautiful. It's just that beauty never ends at the point. I start and stop. I wait. In the back seat, my eggs rattle, my perishables grow soft. Peripheral, the river, silver, sun riven over water. A girl leaning precipitously against the rail.
Great. And I won't follow it with the poem that's in the book that follows it, but in fact, the one that precedes it, which is called Life on Earth. The odds are we should never have been born. Not one of us. Not 1 in 400 trillion to be exact. Only one among the 250 million released in a flood of semen that glides like a glassine limousine filled with tadpoles of possible people, one of whom may or may not be you, a being made of water and blood, a creature with eyeballs and limbs that end in fists, a you with all your particular perfumes, the chords of your sinewy legs singing as they form, your organs humming and buzzing with new life, moonbeams lighting up your brain's gray coils, the exquisite hills of your face, the human toy your mother longs for, your father yearns to hold, the unmistakable you who will take your first breath, your first step, bang a copper pot with a wooden spoon, trace the lichen growing on a boulder you climb to see the wild expanse of a field, the one whose heart will yield to the yellow forsythia, named after William Forsythe, not the American actor with piercing blue eyes, but the Scottish botanist who discovered the buttery bells on a highland hillside, blooming to beat the band, zigzagging down an unknown Scottish slope. And those are only a few of the things you will one day know, slowly chipping away at your ignorance and doubt, you who were born from ashes and will return to ash. When you think you might be through with this body and soul, look down at an anthill or up at the stars. Remember your gambler chances, the bounty of good luck you were born for.
Whew, Dorianne. I love that poem. I love that poem so much.
I didn't realize Highland Hillside was such a tongue twister.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ride, you know, we went on the hillside there. I think I'm gonna end my end of poems with, as we're talking about ash and beginnings and endings and all those kinds of things, with the poem that I wrote for you, Dorianne. Dorianne is a great gift and talent, but what you might not know about her is she also knows a lot about ghosts and aliens. We watch a lot of movies together about those subjects. And I wrote this poem when living with Dorianne, and we were watching a lot of them. It's called Not All of Us Get to Be Ghosts, for Dorianne. In December, I watch movies about ghosts with a woman I call Mama, but she is not my mother, only a woman who is kind. This all I require. We take breaths to lean against each other on the porch, her sucking smoke from between her fingers, exhaling its skirling, each mouthful dissipating, becoming something like air. My breaths, a less impressive phantom, fleeting silver in the cold light. Standing there in our small shadows, we discuss the ways of the dead, their metaphysics, as if we were experts by osmosis, a certain knowledge absorbed. I say I think our ghosts become us, or at least reside in our dark, like tenants we haven't the heart to kick out. She says, though she hasn't quite figured it out yet, there are rules. Not all of us get to be ghosts. We linger in the fringes of each other's fading warmth, counting our dead, considering our chances. Given the choice, I'd like to be let go after, like a balloon wafting toward heaven. But I don't say it, can't allow my absence, the words. Instead, I watch the tiny fire at her mouth, ash on her blouse, like the first flakes of snow. Then look out at the yard, the bare trees, the night steady, soundless approach. Thank you.
And that lovely poem is the penultimate poem in the book. And the two final poems are, that one was for me from Leila, and this is one I wrote for Leila when I was at North Carolina State and trying to woo her to come there. And so I sent her this poem as a wooing.
And she succeeded. I did go. So.
And it's called Autumn Prayer, North Carolina State, for Leila. When I walk to my car, I see him kneeling on a square of dirt beneath a tree, his forehead pressed against a patch of yellow grass. I know he's praying, so I walk lightly, respectfully, my head down so he won't think I'm looking at him. He's maybe 23, thin and kempt, his black jeans and white shirt clean, pressed. Cars roll by, students chat into cell phones. No one seems to notice there's a young man praying. When I get home, I look up Muslim prayer times on the Islamic Finder. Late afternoon, Asir, immediately after the last time limit of Dhuhr until sunset. He must do this all day, no matter where he is. Search for spots of earth between classes, before work, after work, like this one, maybe 3 square feet beneath a young crepe myrtle, native to the Indian subcontinent, 3rd largest Muslim nation, a tree with bark that changes color and produces flowers of many different hues, from deep purple to red to white, with every shade between. Member of the loose strife family, blessed with simple, ovoid, lustrous, thin-veined leaves that release an aromatic odor when bruised and sets free in autumn thousands of small winged seeds. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I thought that was brilliant because I loved that it wasn't pre-planned either. So it was exciting seeing what Leila was going to choose and then how Dorianne was going to respond. What a beautiful way of doing a poetry reading. Thank you. It was amazing. Everyone has been incredible and inspiring. I always say when we have a particularly good Lit Balm, I just want to go off and write poetry for the rest of the day. I'm like on a few poetry panels this morning. So I'm going to mention you all in some way. I'm going to get you into the conversation over here because I think that's what poets do. So thank you. Thank you, Leila and Dorianne, with a Ralph cameo. I mean, who would have thought? Sorry, Mark, if you're happy, I will go back to a couple of extra open micers.
Absolutely. And sorry for jumping the gun, guys.
It's all right. It's always a bit weird on Zoom because there's a delay. I think sometimes it can be tricky. And you've got me dropping in and out from my hotel lobby. Carolyn, you are up next. I'm so excited. I always enjoy it when you read, and I'm sure you've got something devastatingly good for us.
Well, thank you.
Are you there,
so much.
Carolyn?
Yes, Carolyn, right? I'm here. Thank you so much, and I'm honored to follow Leila and Dorianne and poets I have known in other physical spaces, actually in not just in Zoom rooms. So I'm just going to read one short poem from my most recent book, Masquerade. Here it is, with the brilliant, very brightly colored cover. This is set in New Orleans. It's called One Afternoon on Royal Street, and I mentioned two authors. One is Jean Genet, and the other is Cesar Vallejo. One afternoon on Royal Street. You are reading Le Nègre. I am writing to Cesar. The sun gleams like a gold doubloon over the levee and the early winter bloom of camellias, the blue flame trembling in the wall heater. Sun is blooming with a cool flame, and you are talking over Cesar and the early news. I am writing, and camellias are listening past you to the voice of Cesar blooming like a dark sun. Your voice is a blue flame gleaming on the pages of Le Nègre. The levees are trembling winter's darkest gold. Listen, I am talking to you. Thank you.
Wow, what incredibly rich and beautiful imagery. Thank you, Carolyn. You always astound us with your poetry. We have one of my personal favorites. I can't help myself. DeWitt, you've got something special for us for this open mic.
I do. This is a poem called Doctor, and it's from my first collection, Restless for Words, which is coming out from finishing line, at least for advanced orders, in about 3 weeks. My brother, the cancer surgeon, refused to prolong his dying. Smoking left more cancer than lung. He had married his fiancée, Maureen, bedside. Three strange sons appeared. Gold digger, they whispered. She turned him against us. My wife and I had driven down Boston to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Maureen had called my sister in Pasadena, my brother in Colorado. They'd phoned goodbyes. No use coming, Chuck had told them. Before they got here, he'd be dead. Bare-chested, he lay, pillowed and cranked to sitting. TV tuned to golf overhead on the far wall. Second bed stacked with photo albums, spread to memories of their recent month in Kenya, where he had volunteered and done 300 operations. After divorcing the boy's mother, who'd been unfaithful, he'd played the field for 10 years, then dated Maureen for 10. We're engaged, he had announced, although we both know better than to marry. They traveled by Concorde to Paris, vacationed in Cabo. They visited us in Boston, Jack in Colorado. Tired of phony malpractice suits, he had retired early. You have a gift on objective long distance. You can't just walk away. Oh, yes, I can. It isn't easy, but I can. Without prior training, Maureen had assisted him in Kenya, where they also played as tourists, first class, golf clubs, hot air balloons, safaris in the game preserve. He had spoken to me about his will. His sons had called for money, he said. Would I serve as his executor? He wanted to leave half for Maureen, half for his grandchildren, in trust for their education. I'd finally asked if he was sick. He was fine, he'd said. He had one favor now in private. Back home, get a copy of his birth certificate, FedEx it to Maureen to make the paperwork easier. We kissed. My eyes welled. I don't like knowing I'll never see you again, I said. It was a good life, he told me. Love you, Guy. He summoned everyone, wrote out 13 checks, 10,000 each, the maximum allowable for gifts. Each check seemed like part of him, this bread or this body. We drove back home. Maureen kept us updated. His sons hovered still. Morphine doses were enough to kill him. He hallucinated, asked to die in her condo. But no, the hospital was fine. He'd be better cared for, easier on her. She wept, ready to take him, but also alone. She wouldn't know what to do. Heat wave, power failure. By candlelight, I drew a bath, but the drain wouldn't close. As I lay naked, knees drawn up, a steady trickle. Breath by breath, Chuck's life ebbed. I sat up, pushed myself out. Maureen called. He was gone.
Wow. I mean, no one does grief with such poignancy. I mean, DeWitt, amazing, amazing. Thank you. Well, we have John Wessex next, and he's going to tell you in the chat he's got a book out, and it's going to be a brilliant read. So I recommend on his behalf, I'll spruik on his behalf to get The Shaman in the library. John.
Thank you, Cassandra. My new book, The Shaman in the Library. I'll read you a piece from it, and they'll post a link in the chat. And by the way, DeWitt, that was a really touching poem. The poppies of Treblinka drink sunshine like the pale naked skin of daughters, huddled hands over breasts and thighs. Fire red petals flicker in a breeze that supports the screams of husbands and sons first in the showers. Daisies and cornflowers, too, bloom beside rusty barbed wire, the path to death runny with the loose stools of the terrified. Trains of stinking, crowded cattle cars come and go unobstructed by the 10,000 grasses. Galaxies wheel through the vast cosmos, unconcerned with the necklace of teardrops, each reflecting the others. A man with pliers yanks gold from dead mouths. We've yet to extract screams that can cross light years of empty space. Summer clouds roil into a giant Buddha preaching the perfection of this instant. Is that thunder or rifle shots I hear? The birds of thought leave no trace in the sky, but what of the stupa of black oily smoke rising from burning flesh? Tell me, can this meditation cushion survive the crematorium's fire? If not, how can I set it anywhere?
Wow, thank you. That was incredible. It was very moving as well, but it was quite it was full on in a good way. Thank you. Cindy, you are our penultimate reader, the badass poet from Brooklyn. Cindy, are you there?
Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, this was a stellar reading, an amazing reading today. Very inspired. Like Ralph, I think I've read this poem before ad nauseum, but it gives me a chance to plug my book Habeas Corpus from Glassliar Press from a few years ago. Every poem in this book is about a different body part, hence the word corpus, which means body. And this was the first poem I wrote for the series. And I wasn't planning to do a series, but it just took off from there. And it's called Legs. And it's a prose poem, Cassandra. Back when I was ether-eyed and doe-legged, back with my Buddha breaths and a little pastel heart, back with my unruly mop of wild wheat hair, an unholy mess of wild thoughts, back when my home was the porcelain throne, back when I smelled of sea spray and foam, back when I had a quick trigger tongue, back when I was not so wound up and not so wounded, back when I'd fall down on my sweet knees and say, God bless these moon-thin legs, jackknifed and splayed with no spider veins, my precious legs in assorted beds. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all I need to say, Cindy, is Cindy Hockman, we love your legs. That was awesome. And Cindy's got a book coming out too. So I should get you to plug that in maybe next week. If you've got some info you can put in the chat, Cindy. And we always save up Bob for the last because he just has a wonderful gift for ending Lit Balm with something surprising, informative, thoughtful, or just some information. Anyway, I love ending with Bob. So Bob from his famous kitchen will be taking us out this evening. It's 8:30 a.m. here, but for you guys, evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is something different than anything else I've ever written, and it's old. Laughing song. Did you ever? Did you ever? No, I never. No, I never. Did you ever? Did you ever? Never once. No, never once. Did you ever? Did you ever? Once I did long ago. Did you ever? Did you ever? No, I didn't. No, no, no.
Brilliant. Oh my goodness. You are so good at voices. You're really coming out of your shell in the kitchen lately with these performances. Loved it. Loved it.
Thank you.
Mark, back to you.
Well, thank you. And sorry for interrupting Dorianne and Leila. I just kind of like jumped in at the wrong moment, I think. But I'd like to thank all you guys again for this fantastic feature reading, including Ms. Liz, Nick, Andrea, Leila, and Dorianne. And don't forget, tomorrow, Sunday, we have another show, which, you know, it would be sad if you were to miss. Once again, we have Nathan McLean, Joan Cohen-Glass, Sean Singer, Jennifer Franklin, and Fred Marchant. And to end this show, I'm going to read a poem from the Polish poet, Adam Jagajewski. This one translated by Benjamin Ivory. Historical novel. Beyond the city limits, plotters scheme. Judas shouts, victory is ours. An old prince snores in the palace chimes, scents of flour, a baker's apprentice's great yawn. The poet reaches for his quill. Shall he be tender today or incensed? In the theater, Othello forgets his lines. Maybe for once Desdemona survives. An emeritus scientist bends to his brass microscope. The bishop contracts for a lifetime stipend. A printer sets an orbit for the next daily blat. A child is born with an ominous horoscope. A maid tears a page from a date book. Demons sleep and reason. So much for that. Thank you guys for a fantastic evening. Poetry, love, and health. And wow, let's do this again sometime. And we'll hope to see you tomorrow on Sunday, yeah? Cheers.
Peace, love, and poetry, and prose poetry.
Thanks, everybody. It was wonderful. Ciao, ciao. I'll be back in touch. Thanks now. Bye-bye. Yeah.